Hello, friends! Welcome back to another episode talking about the Amazon All or Nothing series about Tottenham Hotspur. This seems absolutely absurd in the midst of all the transfer news we're getting right now, with the Gareth Bale being linked back to Tottenham and Sergio Reguilon apparently close to joining as well. So, obviously, I have a lot of thoughts on that as well. But for right now, I'm here to do this thing. If you want instant thoughts on that, I think Alistair Gold has already put out a video on those signings. So go and check Alistair Gold. If you're not subscribed to Alistair Gold, what are you doing, mate? Just go watch his videos. They're much better than mine. Anyways, let's talk about the Amazon All or Nothing series, even though I would really want to talk about transfers right now. Okay, so we start off with Jose saying this season was impossible, which obviously it wasn't because players get injured. This is a thing that happens, but I understand his frustration, right? Like, you have the Kane problem, you fix the Kane problem with Son, 2 goal scorers, you can work around that. 1 goal scorer, you can kind of work around that. Then you lose all of them. And so you're just left with a few people who work off of goal scores. And so then he's like, okay, I keep just plugging holes and trying to fill solutions and stuff. I understand the frustration. It must have been a very hard period for Mourinho. And yeah, it was kind of an absurd season looking back. But that stuff can happen and you need to be prepared for it. And we really should have had a backup for Kane. Maybe Gareth Bale will be that. I don't know. But yeah, this whole episode is about COVID. Obviously, it's funny looking back at just like how trivial we looked at everything with, like the elbow touching thing. Like, oh, look, they're doing this in Italy. Isn't this fun? And then, I don't know, there's just a lot of like, you could see the, not naivety, but kind of just the unknowing nature of a lot of people when this was going around. Like people just didn't understand what the disease was yet, what this would all entail. So people just had a funny idea of like what the precautions to take were. And obviously there's someone who suggested headbutting would be a new thing. With all we know now about that, no. That is not a good thing to do, sir. We get to the game against Burnley, and one of the coaching staff or one of the physios ask Michel Vorm to describe to Steven Bergwijn how Burnley play because he's never faced them before. And he basically just said, there's no team that plays like that in Holland, which is hilarious. It's like, teams play football in Holland and not whatever Burnley do. It's like, that's funny, but also we're kind of playing like that right now. And then we get another injury report where he's like, okay, Gio is probably not going to be fit. He has an abductor thing going on. Ben Davies has a slight hamstring tear, and you're like, where the hell did that come from? Did they not notice that? And yeah, and then Jose just subsequently ripping up the tactics and being like, okay, start from new again. Recurring theme in this documentary. And again, very hard to deal with. But it was nice to finally highlight Giovanni Lo Celso's performances. I've been saying it the whole documentary. Like, why didn't they talk about the revelation that Giovanni Lo Celso was? And we finally got that because he comes to the physio table and Gio says something like, I'll always be there for you, or I'll always give my all for you. And which is very indicative of Gio as a person. I don't understand why Jose didn't trust him beforehand. Like, why Gio had to prove himself. Like, he knew nothing about Gio. If you had looked into who Giovanni Lo Celso is like as a player, I'm pretty sure Jose Mourinho would have liked him even just from what we knew from his Betis days. But I guess he just didn't like the look of him in training or something. I don't know. But yeah, the Burnley game, we fielded a midfield of Skip and Ndombele. which looking back, I'm like, wow, that I don't even remember us being that bad. But yeah, that's where we were, and they just glossed over the fact that Ndombele had his worst game ever for us, and he had to be replaced at halftime. They kind of skipped over why that substitution was made because they wanted to limit Gio to like 30 minutes of game time, but they had to put him out for 45. It just seemed like all the players were just running on bare. Even Lucas was described as having just fatigue, like general fatigue, which, yeah, around this time in the season, it looked like everyone was. It was nice to see Dele taking some responsibility for the penalty. I honestly thought that maybe Dyer would be the one to step up because he's pretty good at penalties historically. But it's good that Dele was stepping up and, putting, I don't want to say like giving value to his words that he says because he is a good player, but like he is putting his money where his mouth is in a way. I almost completely forgot about Steven Bergwijn being injured and then having to go into Leipzig. They did a really good job of making it look like we were going to put up a fight against Leipzig. We just had no one. We had nothing. They were a much better team, just all the way. But the thing I will say about Leipzig is I do remember it being a moment where I was like, at least they're trying. They look like they're really trying. They're pressing, they're trying, and they're running at the ball, and I love it. But yeah, we just were not up to the speed that we need to be. We didn't have the quality we need to beat them. So what can you do? It was cool to see Alfie Whiteman. He seems a lot older than he is, but it's cool to just see him talk about stuff. He seems very intelligent. But it was cool to see Alfie and Tanganga talk about the virus because obviously a lot of people didn't really know what was going on with it, but he was like, yeah, you can have it for like 2 weeks and not even notice anything, which was like one of the scariest things you learn about the virus the first time. I remember a lot of people just like learning those facts, myself learning those facts and being like, oh, this thing is a lot worse than I thought it was. And that's just how it just keeps going. It was nice to see Jeff Scott and a few of the other people like calling meetings about like, okay, this is what this virus is and this is what this means for right now. We work on a day-to-day basis because that's really all we can do as we're learning more. But it was nice to see them at least taking those precautions of like, here's what we're going to do right now and here's how you can stay safe. It was interesting how Jedson was already wearing a face mask. Good on you, Jedson. Yeah, I remember when they were calling off Serie A and all that stuff, and then Kane and Alfie Whiteman, he was everywhere this episode. We're talking about, Kane made a side comment about, I bet Liverpool fans are going to be pissed. It's like, yeah, he knows. That was just a funny comment. I could understand why Levy wants crowds, just home field advantage and revenue. It makes a lot of sense, and for us, it would have been a good thing. But it's also just strange looking back at how little we knew it was going to affect us, because back then it was like, oh, we're going to play Sheffield in a few weeks, and it'll be fine. It'll be behind closed doors. It'll be fine. But like no clue of the lockdown. Oh yeah, and then Sonny comes back. Sonny comes back from Korea in his quarantine from the surgery. And I just feel bad for him. You can tell, like, him and Kane go out on the pitch. They're having a fun time shooing around and on the pitch. And Jose makes the comment about him looking like RoboCop. And you can just see how much fun Son has on the pitch, just scoring goals, running around, having fun. And then subsequently we get to the part in the episode in the season where it's all really just called off and he has to go into lockdown, and he's just like, no, I don't want to go into lockdown. The football is my life. You don't understand. And yeah, that's a big thing for these players. As Levy alludes to, he's like, yes, these players are privileged. Yes, we're privileged as a football club, but still, lockdown is going to affect people mentally, because this is all people know sometimes. Like, you hear these stories about about players once they get out of their playing career. They just have no clue what to do if they don't go into coaching, and they just can't escape the game. So like going into lockdown, even for a month or two, is a hard thing to do. It's just yeah. I could see how for someone like Sonny, who's so dedicated to his craft, that it would be hard to lock down. And honestly, I wish we got to see a little bit more of like personal stories and anecdotes about the lockdown, but I understand obviously why they couldn't do that. Yeah, I should mention they gloss over the Delhi incident with the Snapchat video, and they gloss over the furloughing, which yeah, you know, you understand why. It's a documentary about Tottenham, and it's not really going to show anything that portrays us in a very negative light. So you could see why it's kind of glossed over. I really thought right before lockdown, it was really responsible of Kane to raise the concerns of the players who were like, I'm afraid for my health, and I'm afraid for just like what's going to happen in the future. He seems to have a really good voice at consolidating everyone's opinion. I feel like he does that for England as well, and that makes him a good leader and a good captain. But yeah, it makes sense that they were trying to postpone it as long as possible because they knew players would just feel terrible at home and in lockdown, and that's true. It's hard for anyone, and if you can postpone it, then and the government says it's still fine, then why not, right? So yeah, it makes sense why they were just waiting out, eking out the days. Looking back, you might say they should have done it sooner, but yeah, what can you say? No one really knew the extent of it before it just hits. So yeah. Yeah, it's nice seeing the food being donated to people, and it's nice seeing the stadium being closed for NHS services and stuff like that. Really good to see that. Obviously, we get to the training section though, where everyone's training at home. Obviously, you can't replicate the high impact load that soccer requires. Obviously, you can't replicate the high impact load that football requires. But you can build strength. I think this lockdown was probably great for building strength for a few people. You could even notice it on people like Sessegnon and Dyer and stuff like that. They just looked like really in shape when they came back from lockdown. um, yeah, there was a huge gap in time though. Like you saw the training footage of them meeting once a day, and then it was just like cut to May, and everyone's coming back. It was cool to see some of the players developing skills and stuff outside of that. You had a big contrast with Dyer, Tanganga, and Delhi. Dyer was like, I built a vegetable garden and I'm self sufficient now and I have a routine for my life. And I was like, I resonate with that, Dyer. I need that to stay sane as well. Which I think is a good coping mechanism for when you're in lockdown. And then Tanganga was like, I learned how to cook Nando's chicken. I was like, good on you, Tanganga. That's also good. And then Delhi was like, I learned how to bake beans. And then someone's like, yeah, it's not that hard. And he was like, yeah, just stick it in a microwave. And you're like, I mean, cook beans. That's not really what I thought you meant. But at the same time, you gotta just applaud the small victories, you know. And different players are going to have different experiences with like what they previously knew and stuff. But yeah, Delhi branching out. I'm pretty sure he has like a personal nutritionist, which is why he branched out. Because lockdown obviously would restrict that. It felt like a fresh start though when all the players came back from lockdown. It was just like, we have all of our players here. Let's get the job done as best we can. Kane, Son, Bergwijn, Sissoko, everyone just, please, we need to get something from this season. Yeah, the Black Lives Matter movement thing comes up, and it was very non-controversial, and you can see why it would have been nice just to have some player anecdotes from that, from Serge Aurier maybe, from Sissoko, just someone to represent the views of why they were doing it, because I feel like some people have strong views about that, and it would have been nice maybe to just to open people up to why these players are kneeling and stuff, because people do disagree with it. I personally, wholeheartedly support it, but yeah. Then there's a moment with Lucas where he's like in a very weird outfit and he has like a band on his arm or something, and he's talking about, now I can't make mistakes because the gaffer is right there and there's no crowd to hide the noise, so he can yell at me and I will have to hear it, which was, it was funny, nice little moment. It was so strange seeing the Manchester United game without fans, even still, even though I'm used to it. But it's nice to hear the ball just being thumped around and the ball hitting the back of the net with the Bergwijn goal. Yeah, it was really, really cool. Then we get to halftime at the Manchester United game, and I thought that was the best tactical insight we got into Jose thus far. Stop Bruno, stop Pogba. Obviously, Jose has worked with Paul Pogba before, and it's weird because a lot of the journalism was saying like he hates Pogba, and there were very verbal disagreements between the two of them. But you can see he still respects his ability. He was like, Paul Pogba's going to instantly up every aspect of Manchester United's game. And once he has the ball, you need to close him down and press him, because he's going to be looking for a switch out to Rashford. He's going to be looking for short passes to do dribbles and all this. Don't let him shoot, which is a big thing, because I think that's what Dyer was trying to do when he lets up the penalty. And that's still controversial to me, but whatever. I just need to let it go at this point. Either way, though, I thought this episode was quite cool to see the response to COVID, because, again, it's just like everyone was learning something new every day. And, yeah, it was a cool episode. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm still on the transfer news in my head. It's hard to really think about the episode right now, but yeah, I thought it was a good episode. Maybe you want to see more of a football highlight stuff, but it's kind of hard to ignore how big of a deal this was, and other people could say they could dive even deeper into what lockdown was. So yeah, there's a balance to be had, but anyways, I like this episode, and next episode I have some great thoughts on it, so yeah, subscribe if you're new to see that. And yeah, I will be releasing that tomorrow. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I will talk about transfer news once we have definite confirmation. Anyways, thanks for watching. See ya. Come on, you Spurs.